This episode of the Successful Encore Career Podcast is presented by Employment for Seniors and sponsored by Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging and Nationwide Insurance.
This is Carol Ventresca, Executive Director of Employment for Seniors.
And I'm Brett Johnson, Board Member with Employment for Seniors.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Successful Encore Career, presented by Employment for Seniors, the premier resource linking mature adults with employment opportunities in Central Ohio. In this episode, Brett had the opportunity to speak with Greg Beumer, Indiana State Representative, District 33.
That's right, Carol. Actually, the studio was on the road for this interview, traveling to Indiana. I've been really looking forward to recording this podcast with him. I've known Greg for nearly 25 years, and I know you'll find his career path interesting and inspiring.
Well, let's find out what makes the successful Encore career.
I want to talk a bit about your position as an Indiana State Representative right now.
Well, first of all, thank you, Brett, for allowing me to be on your podcast. I've served in the Indiana General Assembly. This is my fourth session. Prior to that, served 8 years as a county commissioner and 4 years on a school board. And this is, in my later years, this is something that I've always wanted to do.
Let's spend a little time talking about your years growing up. What types of employment did your parents have, and did that have any influence on how you approached your career when you started working?
Well, I was one of 6 children, the only boy, 5 sisters. The oldest grew up on a farm, a working dairy and chicken farm in Indiana. My father, I would say, certainly was an entrepreneur. Farmers today and even 20, 30, 40 years ago, your livelihood and your success depended on your decisions, your marketing, when to plant, when to harvest, and all of the other animal husbandry things that come into play. So today's farmer, but also farmers of the past, they were entrepreneurs, and I think that had an impact on me over the years.
Let's go over some of your employment history, too. It's why I selected to interview you, because I knew you had a lot of different career paths over the years. Kind of go over where it began, the transition points a little bit, and just so the listener knows where and why I wanted to talk to you.
Well, I was one of those young people, ambitious, wanted to definitely get off of the farm. And so my first job out of high school, ironically, was working for the radio station in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, home of the seer of seers, the sage of sage, the weather-predicting groundhog, Punxsy Phil. Was there for several years and realized that I had that bug, that I wanted to work for myself. And so over the years, from that job on, basically, to the time I'm approaching retirement, I've been my own boss. Everything from owning what I would say was the most fun business that I ever had, which was owning a roller skating rink in the era of the disco, which couldn't have worked out any better, because that's when my family, my children, were also at that age when roller skating was fun. But so from roller skating, of course, working public service on the side, doing more than one thing at a time. So served as county commissioner, served on a local school board. After the roller skating rink business, sold that, made a little money off of that, and suddenly realized that I had what I thought was maybe a skill that I wanted to develop, and that was in writing. And not so much books, but I found that I enjoyed and still enjoy the nuances of putting a puzzle together that is a grant application. Most people cringe at that. But for 20 years, I worked with cities, towns, and counties throughout Indiana, helping them get funding for projects, everything from fire trucks to daycare centers to health clinics and things like that, helping them find the grant funding so that they could, at the least local expense to either ratepayers or to the city, town, or county, provide these services to those residents. And so it was a skill then that later developed into still doing the grant writing, but then helping communities put the pieces together of multiple funding sources. And basically then we became a company that helped communities put the entire funding package together. So it meant, yes, we're going to have to borrow some money, but where can we get the cheapest money and the best terms? Mm-hmm. And we brought all those players to the table, and it was challenging and rewarding. After that, then moved into what I'm doing now as far as working for the public at the state government level.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the grant writing years really pushed you to where you are today. That made a big difference.
I would say so. And of course, during all those years, worked for myself. We would sink or swim on our decisions on how we treated our customers, the quality of our work, and of course, you sink or swim in that area just by your success. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to say, hey, I'm a grant writer, but if you can't get a grant, you're going to be out of business pretty quickly. Right. And still have the best customer service. So you have to know their skills behind it as well.
Right. Who helped you through all those career transitions? No one can work in a vacuum, obviously. What resources, what people did you go to help you get through that? And they were there automatically and didn't even have to ask.
Right. I would say at the local government level, there were many people who are always, and I'm sure this exists today, there are people looking out for individuals who exhibit some leadership skills and the willingness to commit to and be involved and take the responsibility for public service. So that included a county chairman who said, hey, do you ever think about running for office? And yeah, the first time I ran for office, I did not win. But those are the lessons you learn. Mm-hmm. And then the public says, oh, this person's interested in being a part of local government. The second time you run is much easier. In the area when I was doing the grant writing, there were people at the state level who were in charge of state agencies who I actually contacted, and I said, they were the people with the money. I said, well, tell me about this. And they encouraged me. They said, yeah, our communities, especially in rural areas, we need people who can help them connect the dots. That's what I did. I basically was a person who went out and helped communities connect the dots. But there were always people behind me who said, who I could go to, especially in those early years, and say, would you read this for me, critique it? And they were always there to help.
Yeah, I think it's a common problem among mature workforce as well as, anyone that's kind of looking to move on and expand is not to rely on the network that they have that already exists they didn't even realize they had, as well as just talking it up, talk about yourself, promote yourself in the best way possible without coming out and saying, hey, hire me, I'm the best person doing it and such. But I think it's talking it out, talking about your future, talking to the right people.
Oh, most definitely. And in today's political world, with all the discussions of the tweets that come from the highest office in the land, social media is so important at the state legislative level. And yeah, we're constantly out there getting opinions from the public, and we have to act on those.
Yeah, and it sounds as though without really knowing you were doing it, you were networking. Ultimately, it wasn't really a focus saying, I've got to go out and network. You were doing it without even realizing it.
Most certainly, and it is amazing how the contacts that I developed, especially when I was doing the grant writing work, but even when you own something as simple as a roller skating rink, and you work with and you provide entertainment for people's kids, they remember that. You created a wholesome environment, and it reflects on you. When you're a grant writer and you help a community get a new fire truck, those firemen don't forget you. They become part of your network. And it is amazing to me how all of these things sort of have culminated into helping me be able to represent in Indiana, each member of the House of Representatives. We represent 65,500 people. It's pretty hard to be known by that many people. But when you've owned some businesses, or you served in public service, or you provided a service to the cities and towns of the various communities in your district, people remember you, and that becomes part of this unofficial. It's not part of your social network. It's your I think it's almost an unofficial network. People go, we know that person. He would be good in that job.
Right. Now, working at the state level as you are, I'll give a little background on this question I'm going to ask. Just this past week, Ohio Secretary John Husted reported that the state of Ohio, again, two different states, but again, it's interesting news. The state of Ohio broke records in March for the number of new businesses recorded in his office. The state of Ohio is doing really, really well. What I wanted to ask, it's kind of a twofold question, is how you're seeing Indiana is stacking up with that. New businesses being developed and recorded, as well as some advice on how to get that going, especially at an adult over 50. What's the best route, as you see at a state level, to get that accomplished?
Well, the first part of your question, I would say Indiana does stack up pretty well in job creation, and in particular in the state's fiscal responsibility. We have a AAA bond rating. We still maintain a $2 billion surplus. Many states can say that, but there are a lot of states that can't. The brunt end of many jokes in the Indiana State House involve the state of Illinois, and at least we're not them. We do pay our lottery winners, instead of handing them an IOU. But to answer your question, the second part, where the individuals who are looking to transition and so on, it's crucial to me, one, what interests you? What piques your attention? Is it in volunteerism? Is it working for a not-for-profit? And then just assessing what skills you have. And everybody brings skills to the table. There's nothing that you should overlook. And if it's working in a food pantry, or you just pick your topic. And I say food pantry because that is in essence what my wife and I in our retirement years, and I think so many of the baby boom generation are like-minded. We've come to the end of our careers. We have lots of skill sets. And now many, many of us are saying, it's not time to quit yet, but let's do something that gives back to our community. And for us, it was simply working in a food pantry, just being there every week. And we are finding that many of the skills that we picked up through our working lives have been very beneficial in that volunteerism.
Yeah. I think it just sometimes takes just the moment of sitting around a coffee table with your significant other or a best friend or whatever it might be, and just jot down on a piece of paper what you love to do. Really explore it. And sometimes it's difficult for that self-exploration because you're downplaying so many things that you actually think are not important, but they are. And possibly talking it out with someone, you'll figure that out a little bit easier than doing it yourself in your head.
And the other part of that is figuring out what you want to do, but also maybe doing a little research and finding out what's out there. There's no way any of us can know all the needs in our community.
Right.
And I mentioned food pantries, but there are, just with my involvement in state government, I'm finding out more and more every day that the state and at the federal level, we fund things that I didn't even know about.
Oh, wow.
And so it's doing a little research as well.
An idea is rolling in my head about similarities between younger entrepreneurs, small business owners, and matures. Both bring such different talents and skill sets to the table, but you don't hear about the two generations working together other than possibly a father, son, daughter situation where the father brings a different level a different mindset to the business, and the son's a little bit, or daughter's aggressive, wants to do this, change things up. What are your thoughts about that? And just what you talked about as well, that matures are looking to volunteer and to give back, but there are a lot of other programs out there that may not realize that younger adults are actually helping with, but that matures can do as well in tandem with that.
I would say one of the areas where young and old work well together is in the arena of politics. And certainly at the state level, we have so many young people who want to get involved in politics, and it may not be their end career or the career they actually pick, but they have skill sets, especially in the media section, where most of us my age, we haven't kept up. And so those young people help keep our name out there in the forefront, and through the various social media channels. But it's much more than that. They bring a sense of what's important to today's their generation, and they definitely do see the world much differently. Right. So we have this wonderful mix, I'm sure at all state houses, of young, aggressive, ambitious young people. Right. Who see the world a little differently than most of us who are in our 60s. Right.
And those in our 60s, 50s had that look 20, 30, 40 years ago at that time as well, too. It just it just changes. We get a little bit more hardened in our look. Life sets in where they're just starting it out and want to change the world as much as they can at the very beginning, too.
Sure.
Yeah. Finally, what tips, advice would you pass along to a friend who's considering entering that career transition, or maybe an encore career, however they want to label it? But things are changing in their life, and they need some advice. They need that kick in the butt kind of thing. You can do this. Go. What would you tell them?
First of all, I would say, to thine own self be true. Try to figure out. If you could go back and turn the clock back to where you were 21 or 25 and you had it all to do over again, what would you change? What are the things you never did? And then, aside from that, look at what you're made of and how you fit into some of these wonderful volunteerism opportunities, and maybe second career opportunities. Do you enjoy computers? In my case, do you like to write? And other than being a grant writer or writing a book, what other things are out there that you could do? Code writing. There's so many things. I will tell you, many times you think about, what if I could turn the clock back? I don't know that I would want to do that, because the opportunities the young people today have so many opportunities, right. and yet it's sad to see them. A lot of young people just go, I don't know what I want to do, and it's like you want to say, are you kidding me?
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. But that should excite, in that same vein, older adults to take a look at it as well, going, the world is still your oyster.
It is.
It just look at it a little bit differently, possibly, but it's still so many opportunities. It's just approaching it the right way with the right people behind you.
Sure. And maybe if there is such a thing as reverse mentoring.
Correct.
Why not talk to some younger people?
Right.
Let them kind of see what they're thinking.
Yeah. And it's also recognizing what your skills. What are you good at? What aren't you good at? And find the person or people that are good at what you can't do. If that's what you want to do as a second act, a second career, encore career, you don't have to go it alone. No one ever asks anyone to go it alone. Find the right people that can do it the right way for you.
Sure. Yeah. And don't be afraid to develop those skills.
Exactly.
It just seems like we try to think, well, I want to be a volunteer. But maybe be much more than a volunteer. Maybe become the CEO of that regional food bank or something like that. There's many people have those skills. Maybe you just need to fine-tune a few of those.
Right, over time, exactly. Yeah. Well, thanks again for being a guest on the Successful Encore Career.
You are very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Sure.
Thanks for listening to the Successful Encore Career podcast presented by Employment for Seniors and sponsored by the Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging and Nationwide Insurance. This podcast is available on our website, employseniors.org, as well as Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or your favorite podcast player. To help us defray the cost of producing the podcast, consider donating to Employment for Seniors. Go to employseniors.org and click on the Donate Now button. Any amount is appreciated, and we will be sure to thank you for your support in an upcoming podcast episode. Employment for Seniors is the premier resource linking mature adults with employment opportunities. If you are 50 years of age or older and living in Central Ohio, we are here to help you find employment. And Central Ohio employers, our mature, talented, skilled, and dependable job seekers will provide significant value to your organization. Follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. If you have a topic or an interview idea for the podcast series, let us know. Send us an email at podcast@employseniors.org.
Circle270media.com